pull out a knife, lose your life, think twice, alright? Your soul is the price, like a game of dice, cold as ice. Red, black, or white, red eyes with blurred sight. I still write, whether I'm wrong or right. Take flights to reach higher heights. We get high to get by, struggle to make it, so we hustle and take it. Barely make it ends meet, ain't it? Unfortunate, fortunate to be what we wanted to be. Your ultimate destiny for infinity. Life's a test to me. I gotta pass, make it back. HIV in a fat car accident. My in a fat cast. I had beef. Last thing I heard was the blast of the eagle. Not a bird, not a word on the streets. The end of the world.
Yeah, niko na home nyingi kushinda maboys o Mike Rabine. In fact chakwa mkimbizi na John ndio naitwanga. So sinafai nipatie hivi macalls na Mike Saba kwa kuleta hali ya taharuki. Toka anduki kampangaji mwisho mwezi landlord akidai kwanja. Hata kabla nibishe mlango kwa babai kanga. Wakaushe aka Sub-Zero wamefreeze joto wanadai flana. Temperatures zimepita za huko Mombasa na mbali sana. Zinedine Zidane starting lineup ya Real Madrid, na hiyo inamaanisha huku utoboi kudai namba plus striker wao shachoka kohoya na dai sub. Ni mambo na kumark territory, kwa hivyo madogi za mitaa zingine hazikojoi mitani hapa kuifanya iwe ngumu kwa ujamaa wa yoyo kubai manga kunimwagia unga ili kuona unga ya jogoo ikimwagi kanga. Saa zingine hata blue ya madondo sijaipata, wanchwani ya taros kwa ile noma ni shy hata situation ukuta nyuma ya mgongo kashai vana. In the process I can't take it no more na dai kamba tishia kujihang hivi ama kuthreaten kujirusha kutoka kwa building kama KCC. Akili zipasuki kwa flow ni die faster. Juma heta wakisikia hivyo watafurahi sana. Smile kushinda ule jamaa na kwanga kwa promo ya chai jaba. Budel flani anytime kwa socks utawaiganja. Alafu tukishaji bonga fresh ndio do wataitana. Kuisha tunawapiga bao, tumejihami na mapunchline kibao. Kikosi cha mizinga uko mao, tunawaribia kwenye maviwanja zao. Tunawapiga bao, tumejihami na mapunchline kibao. Kikosi cha mizinga uko mao, tunawaribia kwenye maviwanja zao. Ama back up nini?
Imagine tukiishi kwa mkate na maji, kwenye nchi tuna have kuweka vitu juu ya maji, ta have kututafuta kwa ma mixtape. Imagine tukiishi kwa mkate na maji, kwenye nchi tuna have kuweka vitu juu ya maji, ta have kututafuta kwa ma mixtape soul searching. Imagine survival kwa projects za ghetto, marival ni macops na marifle. Uki-expect nimbe nyimbo zina maana, napokuwa kwa project God na provide mana. Timiza ajira na usifaka pusani ndio stick na mila. Itabidi tulize stress tani ndani ya streets za D by enemies. My enemies wanataka kunikiss but hawataishi coexist kwa conscious yangu. Big up youth yote na land through mistari zetu. Bado nyini mandugu kasi marijuana tungiejuana, but first itabidi kuschool fools naposhika hizi tools. Till bill governor itisha nitapena chenye na say. I say pitisha ashwe shape, wanajishuku that wanna go astray. Hawajui suspense wingia kabla ya kutense. Uwe focus but still uwezi how past tense. Hell in a bind the agency yenye upo penye mpo, mnajua mnajiuliza nini itafanyika justice kife. Nipate nikise na feel sad. I for a 9 the option plus ijali. As long as ghettos zina undergo army. The revolution 2006 na tsunami. Yeah, the tsunami.
Imagine wengine wanafungiwa, wengine wanafunguliwa milango. Usishuku mambo ya Mola, usijali mambo ya kesho, angalia mambo ya leo.
Onja maji ya chumvi, energy ya vumbi, wenyeji ndani ya building. hawahitaji magrupi wako uchi wanaudhi. Jesus Christ na ishi C-class life, uliza Islands mics ziko on. Children homes, dispensaries, NGOs, society na die food, majority wanapanga ku ingia bunge na mapanga juu. Imagine kwa mkate na maji ni mavi, kuishi vitongoji bila kazi. Imagine vitongoji bila kazi. Imagine vitongoji bila
mkate na maji, vichwa juu ya maji. So searching in mkate na maji, juu ya maji. So searching, oh yeah, imagine. So searching, oh yeah, imagine. So searching.
Himta ilinielimisha nje ya madirisha, na licha ya mimi na wiji pekee kuwa mashifta, kuna wengine ambao staji majina na timu, na wale jana usiku usingizi walikunyima. Indio walikuficha maticha wakole, huyu anambuyu yule akona bullet kwa mwili, hakumaliza shule, education ya bure. Wale wako na talent lakini wanajidai waizi wa wallet. Angalia round wale uko nao, kuna wale unaona hawana ubao, na ni wangapi wale uko nao ni walevi mpaka mkono ni heavy kupeleka kwa mdomo, na chakula iko ready na savings zote za mwezi ziliishia kwa ulevi. Na nyisikizeni nyimbo, si tuko simple. Huyo pimpa kona pimpo, cheki hawa wazae wameritaya kwa bar, wamelewa wanaimba ile song ya kuna dawa. Mziki majina nyingi wanaipa, bill wabunge hawaipas, gazeti hawaichapishi, koti hawaiapishi, malalamishi kwa wapishi amridhishi ladha. Kilomita kadhaa mbali na Makoni, Johnny alitoa maoni kuhusu vile hawa mahomi wanastaili maombi. Hawelewi kwenda obi, Nairobi ni hobby. Umeingia kwa matope na open, natembea na nyumba yote kakobe, na siku husu bei ya earrings odo inatoshana nao kubai maplot Kayole. Ni point vidole tusikuone ho na mapanja college. Kwa sasa tuonane lakini tusiachane bila namba na address. Gata press tunakata race katikati kuwaletea ujumbe kutoka madukani.
Kitusua Mashifta album inauzwa kwa maduka zote, tangu ninunua inanikeep busy. Hadi white stock rust bei ya kutupa.
Feel free kunichukulia P3 unipeleke kwa afande, mkono zangu hazina grip nitaibaje. Kani kupiga ngumi ilikuwa reflex. In the meanwhile kuagree kuachana na mi, makaratasi zimesainiwa mithilia 1963. Ile mbio tunapeleka nayo mchezo inastahili TLB. Unaweza dhani si upaka grease miguu, barabara tulieka mara, mjina tuliigwara kwa simiti mbichi. Ni biashara sasa, itabidi ya restaurant kutufuata. Lugha kwa masikio za idara ya upelelezi na raia kwa jumla inabakiwa na ipima na kucha na karas ka unga na waya, kanyaga ka aga ka nitaaga ka nimetimiza kile na kimbiza. Msininyamazie, stand ndani kutaza jela, msinitarajie. Kuleni pande yenu, mniachie yangu, msinikanyagie. Katumelewana, toa miwili basi nipasie. Methali zinafanya niingie kejani, gezani ndio hizi. Begani medali, wembe za upasuaji, jembe za uzalishaji, mavuno beikali ndio hizi. Nani chizi kuliko brain?
This is a vote. It's the beat maker, not the beat taker. 10 fingers in the air. That's how we present. If you don't know, you better ask your mom or ask Akinyi with the good hair. Yes, it's hip hop. It's Kenyan hip hop. Not just Kenyan hip hop locally, but it's Kenyan hip hop to the world. Yes, the world needs to know what Kenya is doing. Because Kenya, trust me, you hear those records that I've been playing? Hey, Kwanzaa. The one I like is Uko Flani Mau Mau. Uko Flani had this thing they used to say on the record. What's your Uko Flani Mau Mau? A lot of people forget, like, Uko Flani Mau Mau, how it was. Let's break it down for you. So, Uko Flani ni Mombasa. Let's start from there. Yeah? Mau Mau is Nairobi, and they come together, Uko Flani, Mau Mau. So Uko Flani have their records, also Mau Mau have their records and their mixtapes, you know. But one thing about them that you cannot ignore is the way they put those records together. You're like I'd be around people who would listen to those records and they're just head bobbing. They're like, hey, yeah, man, you know. Yeah, because that's what conscious rap, or what we call underground. They say underground hip hop. Some people call conscious hip hop. That's what it does to you. It makes you think. And I remember even how I came into contact with Uko Flani. That time I was not in Kenya. I was all the way up in London, East London, Forest Gate. Yes, representing Massive over there. Big thing, you know. So what happened was, like, I remember there's someone that I used to kick it with. Yes, kick it with is a word. But she was back here in Nairobi, and she was linked to them. And so she told Uko, hey, I know a guy out there who has some good productions. I want to link you up. Then from what I heard, they said, hey, tutasikia beat zake, lakini kazi ziko down. We were not going to be interested. So they heard some of the records I was working on, and that is how I feel our union began. My union began, the Beatmekah and Uko Flani Mau Mau, you know. And that time they're working on their project Dandora Burning. So I'm actually I did like 1 or 2 tracks on Dandora Burning. The other producers, of course, that were on it. And shout out to that project, you know. You know, I feel it was a great project. It's a project that really, I feel, represented Kenya and where Kenya was going that time in terms of music and what they were doing, you know. Now, those guys no longer young guys anymore. They're still, some of them are still in the game, still dropping records and everything. You have guys like you have people like Jirongi, of course, dropping his records. You have guys like Giuliani, of course, dropping their records, you know. We had guys who you'd hear back in the days like Zaka, Naka, you know. Basically there are quite a few of them in there. And I remember the other day there was this celebration of 50 years of hip hop. It was a worldwide thing. So at Allianz, they had this celebration where they were giving Uko Flani Mau Mau, let's call it their gems, you know. They're giving them their flowers on that day. So all, like, the whole of the hip hop community that you knew about everywhere came through on that day. Allianz was packed. It was packed, like, to the sky, if you know what I mean, you know. So it was packed out. It was a good day, you know. You saw Uko Flani there on stage doing a bit of their thing, you know, and other guys that come through. All the time, guys now saw that Doobies had come back, and so he was there, also there, you know. So it was a good day. And so I've always said that Kenya has a hip hop culture, but I feel that our hip hop music has more or less been forgotten in Kenya, which is a sad thing, you know, because we were the centerpiece of hip hop when we look about it in East Africa, you know. Of course, Tanzania also played a big part, massive part, you know, and how hip hop music is put together, how it's done, the records that were put out there, you know. And there was a certain kind of love between Kenya and Tanzania coming together, working on records. So I feel when it comes to East Africa, those are the guys who represent. Doesn't mean that Uganda didn't have rappers. I mean, we have people like the Myth, Navio. There's MC Yala, who's still out there doing her thing. A massive tours abroad, was doing her thing. I mean, the other rappers who are out there, guys like Ruyonga. Of course, you saw him on the Calligraph record. So the other guys who are out there. It's just that Kenya had more of a prominence when it comes to that. I feel that Uganda has more of a prominence when it comes to dancehall music. That's the thing they love. But some of the top dancehall artists, they actually started their careers also in Kenya from Uganda. So Kenya plays a big part in music and how music is actually put together and how it's done up till now. So that's an important thing. But as time has moved on, we came and we're talking about how is the music industry in Kenya? Why is it not growing to the masses that it really needs to grow to? And the other day I saw this comment on social media about this Kenyan musician who's based in South Africa. And he was talking about why South African music has grown. Let's not get it twisted. Like Amapiano is great. It's a new modern music that has come out of South Africa. But there are other genres. There are hip hop artists also who have been there for a long time, and their music has been played over there. But one thing that caught my attention is what this guy said. He actually said that what they are focused on doing is South African producers spending time in the studio with artists, working on records, mixing them and mastering them, but collaborating with their local artists. They don't focus. Actually, Amapiano doesn't really focus on artists abroad and how that music is done over there. They focus there, and they've kind of taken it to that point where, you either embrace us or you don't. The same thing the Afrobeats did. It said you either embrace us or you don't. And so the problem with Kenya is that we allowed too many people to come into our market, where now the Kenyan music, even in the hip hop sector, is focused on playing other artists from out there, and that is a true point. That is a true point that I feel, and I've said this for years. We need to embrace our own instead of crucifying our own. Because no one is going to love Kenyan music more than we love it. No one is going to love Kenyan hip-hop more than we love it. Don't even lie to yourself that it's going to be. That's how things are going to be. Because we understand when someone raps about a certain thing or sings about a certain thing. Got to remember, hip-hop is not just about rapping. It's also R&B artists are in that sector. But when you hear that music and you hear people talking in a dialect that you understand, you're like, I can understand that. When you hear people singing ethnic music where you be like, you come from a certain tribal sector, you be like, I understand. No one will ever understand that music more than us who live here. And guess what? This generation, if we don't keep on like embracing them and helping them grow, there's going to be another generation that comes after them and there'll be no change. So we need to focus on that. But when we look at what we call the mainstream hip-hop movement, the way it has changed in Kenya. First of all, tech has played a big part, on how things go, but there's been the democratization also of how music is. And when I mean by how tech plays a part, it means that artists can now rise from TikTok, SoundCloud, or YouTube without a record deal. You actually don't need a record deal to survive right now. You don't actually need one. You can go out yourself, and decide on how you want to market your music. Because if you look at the history of the recording industry and how the record labels came up, the record labels were the investors. They invested in talent. That's what their job was, straight and simple. The thing was to invest in these artists who are coming up. But guess what? Like, they would put the money up that was needed. they would put up how it was going to be distributed and everything, and they would take a percentage. They would invest in you and take a cut from what you make. But I feel also a lot of people don't understand in today's day and age, and I met a lot of artists who don't understand how record labels operate. I have my own record label, and I talk about it all the time, but they don't understand the way the recording industry actually operates. They just think that once I record a song, once I record a song and I put it out there, where's the money? But that's not how it works if you go to a record label. If you go to a record label, they first of all have to calculate how much they've invested in you, take back of what they've invested in you. Once they made their amount of money, then they pay you out your royalties, and it's good for artists and for people who want to get the music industry to understand how royalties operate. There's performance royalties, which is different. That of course could be on live stage. And there's mechanical royalties, which is a physical sale of, like, those days it was like CDs, or vinyls, And a lot of people don't understand the way these royalties operate. But if you can imagine, the company has to take back what they've invested in you for you actually to make a cent. And we see people going bankrupt worldwide based on that they didn't understand the way the music on it. One of the biggest examples that I can think about is TLC. TLC basically was selling records all over the world, but they said they were totally broke, And so a lot of people don't understand the way it operates. So when social media came in, one thing that elevated the game was that as an artist, you can actually go out there and promote your music on these social media channels, whether it was SoundCloud, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Spotify, you can TikTok, whatever you want. You can go and put your music out there, and you can claim back, your own royalties, like they pay out to you directly. Disadvantage about the apps and everything out there is, like, right now there are way too many that you don't even know which one you should go with. And sometimes you feel like, I've spent a lot of time putting this music together, but it's not making me the returns that I need to. I've seen a lot of hip hop artists in Kenya complain about that, and they feel they're not growing. So I feel that's another reason why Kenyan hip hop also is not growing, and music generally is not growing, is because we try to work on one outlet and think this one outlet is going to save us. But in the positive side about it is, your music is getting out there. People get to hear about you. And when people get to hear about you, you can always reach out to people directly, and say, hey, I'm having this record I'm putting out. For example, if you look at someone like this guy who now was arrested, but Tory Lanez, you look at what happened to him. There's a time he said he was putting out his album and he was selling his album for $1. He made $1 million easy. He was the one controlling the money, not anyone else controlling it on his behalf. So there is ways to go about this, I feel that the art and the industry, if you ask a lot of young people, has changed, If you look at the earlier hip-hop, the way it was put together is different the way hip-hop is put together right now. There's a massive difference the way it's put together. When you hear even beats, the way they're put together, like boom bap, what they call boom bap, hip hop, was based on that beat of, it had that that certain kind of beat there where they say, oh, that's an underground beat. But people forget a lot of these records were sampled from the jazz movement, from jazz records, And so they had that certain, it was more about the feeling, it was more about the feel. It was more about, like, that when they're talking about their system, the way they lived and what moved them. So you hear people like when you hear people like locally, when you hear about our guys like K-South Flavor, like Bamboo and Doobies, when you hear about Kalamashaka, when you hear about the Uflani Mau Mau, you realize that a lot of the rap that they did was based on where they came from, and that's what people wanted to hear at that time. Right now, the whole spectrum of rap has changed, It depends on what you're listening to, but it's become not a little, but a lot of commercialness in it, So it's more based on when people put out records, it's more based on profit, you know, than on purpose, you know. Back in the days is yeah, what's your purpose? Like what do you want to so if a guy began his album, he would talk about things that meant a lot to him, you know. And if you listen to like the Illmatic or Stillmatic record that was out there by Nas, or you listen to the early Jay-Z records, you know, Reasonable Doubt, you know, you listen to that. You listen to guys like Wu-Tang Clan, you know, you listen to Mobb Deep, you know, listen to Mobb Deep, Quiet Storm. It was very specific about what they were talking about. But nowadays in hip hop, you can talk about anything. Like anything you want to talk about, like anything, and they're just like it's more of a danceable kind of rhythm that producers are putting together for the artists. So back in the days, it was very much what's happening in your community, what's happening to you in your life. And I think that music was good because it's something that we could reflect with easily. But I also feel the new music that's coming out right now, even in Kenya, is great. What young guys are putting out, you know, because it's their version of their reality and what they feel and how they are growing and what they like to get down to. Maybe they don't like what you got down to. Is different. I remember there's a time there was an influx of a lot of music from outside of Kenya. Like I remember the time when Afro beats and bongo flavor had really taken over. Like you know, there were Kenyans who were not happy about that. There are a lot of guys who are feeling like they lost the element of what Kenyan music was about. But there's also a lot of Kenyans that embraced it and they felt like this was the future. And then all of a sudden, there are these guys who came up, there's these youth who came up and did Gengeton. You know, early on before that time, there was Genge. And then came Genge. There's Kapuka. There are all those other different ones. And that was their story of what they were going through. But when Gengeton came in, I heard a lot of Kenyans say, you know, we're happy. This is our music. What they're talking about. There was pros and cons. The pros was at least Kenyan music is reigning once again. It's getting out there once again. We're enjoying our music. The negative side about it was some people felt that some of the things, the topics they were talking about in that music wasn't the greatest and they were putting down women. That's another big problem that has facing like hip hop for a very long time, about women being demeaned. That's why you see there's a new genre kind of women who are coming up on their views of saying my body, my choice, you see them coming out and saying how they feel about things that they also got to be respected. If you look at some of the awards right now that are being won, there are quite a number of women that are out there doing their thing. If we look at Kenyan hip hop, there's a new size of women coming up. Like I said before, there's artists like Tulia, you know, who's putting out great music. Shazzy B, of course, is putting out great music. Veral is out there putting out great music. You know, Verem Kaliwao. You know, we have so many different artists, female artists that are coming up. We have others who are even rapping in Swahili, who are doing it in their mother tongues, who are killing it at the end of the day. You know, there's the advantage about the new tech, the new way of doing music. There's been a lot of emergence of women coming up, you know, and that's a positive thing because hip hop can't always just be about men. And if we want to raise the hip hop standard in Kenya, if we want to raise it up for where we're going right now in music, Kenyan hip-hop, bringing it to where it needs to be. Because, yes, Kenyan hip-hop was great in the past, but guess what? We're no longer in the 90s. You know, very soon we'll be like, Happy New Year, and it'll be 2026. So what will be the change now? You know, so I'm trying to understand, have we lost our way? Like, do we really understand where Kenyan hip-hop is going? Or we just think that we have an idea where it's going, you know? I'm curious, when you hear music out there, what do you guys feel who are listening? Do you feel like we're actually gaining traction in our music and hip hop the way it goes? When you listen to it lyrically, what people are saying. If you took away the beats, you know, because I've been around Nairobi quite a bit in other places where people say, hey, hata sisikiangi msanii anasema nini, me I just listen to the beats. Like Are you serious? You've already lost out if that is your main focus, you know? And so we also gotta be like, you know, let's go out there, let's promote our own. How many of you guys actually go out there and say, you know what, I'm gonna download this record, I'm gonna pay to download this record because I want to support this artist and I believe in this artist? If we're not doing that, then there's a problem, you know. That means our music is not growing to where it needs to be. All the time when I talk to people that I know who are outside of Kenya, and they always ask me one question, and this has been coming up a lot on social media out there. People say, what is Kenyan sound? What is Kenyan sound? Does Kenya have a sound? You know, do we have a sound at all? You know, like they say, if you go to Tanzania, you know that's bongo. They have a certain kind. Though I tell them, like, bongo flavor died a long time ago. All they're doing right now is pop music. That's honest truth. When you go to Uganda, Uganda have a certain way that they do their dance hall and their local dialects. Always been like that. So people ask, what is the Kenyan sound? My answer to that is, do we actually need a Kenyan sound? And I remember my boy Makadem brought this up the other day on social media, and I replied and I said, do we actually need I can understand where people are coming from when they say they need something. You know, like, for example, if you go to certain places like in Africa, they'll be like, oh, you know, we're the original. Like, if you say there's a certain dress code, you'll be like kente cloth or whatever. You say that comes from Ghana. You know, we have a certain way we dress, you know, this comes from this country. But in music, like, who actually owns a sound? That would be my question. Who actually owns a beat? You can say that this is mine. There's never been anyone who's made anything like this. So from today, this will be the sound how it goes to. I remember some years ago, there's one individual that I know personally who tried to come up with what he called a Kenyan, that like he owned that beat. And this was Ambrose. He came up with this thing called the bounce beat. You know, he called it the bounce. Though we know the bounce, there's other places that have come up with a thing called bounce, you know, but he called it the bounce. If I'm not wrong, this was around 2006, around 2005, 2006, 2007, around there. That's when I remember hearing about the bounce. And around that time, it was really growing and other artists were jumping on it. Like, you see even artists from Tanzania who had jumped on it. Like, he had this track that he did with, I think, Nakaya, Mr. Politician. You hear a bit of that beat in there. And it was growing. There's a lot of artists who was working with. He was good at promoting it, and he promoted himself to them. And then guess what? Nothing ever remains yours. Nothing ever remains yours in history. So there's this other guy, DJ Gitch Boy, who they got into a beef with because he started claiming that he's like the guy behind that beat. You know, I remember talking to Ambrose and he was pissed off. He was just like, yo, this guy, he's even claiming that he's the one who taught me how to play piano. It became, I was just thinking like, okay, what is this all about? But in his aim to create that sound for Kenya, you know, I can't remember how long the bounce beat actually lasted. But I remember that time, there was a lot of talk still about we need to have our own sound. So I was telling Makadem, like, I can understand where this thing of having a Kenyan sound comes from, especially in the music that we love over here, whether it's hip hop, whether it's rumba, whatever it is. You know, we have to have our own sound. But I don't feel that it's very important because Kenya is very versatile. That you can't put people in one place and say this will be the sound for Kenya. Hey, Mile, I wrote that, man. Like, few minutes I got a call. It's like, what do you mean by saying that? You know? And I said, it's the honest truth. You know, we can have one sound that defines us as Kenya. That is impossible, you know? But I understand when people say that from experimental point of view, that's what they want. So I feel Kenyan hip hop has been tied down to a certain way of thinking, and the new generation that is coming up is changing that way of thinking of how music should be put together, you know. And there's going to be another generation that comes after them. I don't know if they'll get along with them or they'll flow together, but there is a new movement that's coming together. So the question you've got to ask yourself, do you want to remain the past, or do you want to move to the present? You know, so has hip hop really lost its way in Kenya? I feel it's like Kenyan hip hop is like a split sheet. You know, when you get in the studio and you're recording and you're amongst other people, there's a contract called a split sheet where you basically put down who has done what and who has done what on that record. And so when it's time to pay out the royalties, you know, this percentage goes this and this and this and this. I feel like Kenyan hip hop has become like a split sheet. We have guys from the past who played a big part in what they did, and they're doing their thing, and they've done their thing, and it's a new genre. Then there's a new generation of artists who are putting out new music that we never expected to come out. We never expected how it would work, and we couldn't expect how it would work because the world is always changing. So in Kenyan hip hop, it kind of has remained the same in a way, and it's kind of lost its way, you know, but it's bound to lose a bit of its way when new things emerge in it. Even when we look at hip hop, let's say in the States, you know, let's say they say that hip hop, a lot of people say, oh, you know, started in the Bronx. But we look at the Bronx right now, and we look at what music is taking over. Hip hop is not what it used to be. There's records that are still coming out. They're still trying to put out the music, but even some of the old players who are in the game, well, they understand how it operates. They had to make a change on how things were done. Some of them are in the game, some of them are not in the game, and that's how music is. And so when we look at Kenya is a different way of thinking. It's a different way that we do our music. Is Kenyan music hip hop great? Yes, it is great, without a doubt. We have our stories. We will never be like the other places in East Africa. We'll never be like the other places in other places in Africa. You know, funny enough, it's like they say all the time in Nigeria, they say, oh, it's Afrobeats, you know. But there are also rappers from Nigeria, but you rarely hear about them. You know, there's rappers in Congo, you know, there's rappers in Rwanda, you know, there's rappers all over the place, you know. But every place is different. And I feel for Kenya to move forward in our genre of music, for us to move forward and become great once again in what we do, the people have to come together, and we've got to elevate each other. If we're not elevating each other, then guess what? This music is gonna die. It's gonna sell out, and it's gonna die. When I say selling out, doesn't mean it's gonna sell a lot of volumes. It means what it is it's gonna die a death, you know. So question is, you know, has hip-hop really lost weight? Maybe not. Maybe it's just the map that has changed. You know, when you look at the map, you know, and we look at even the maps that were done back in the days, a physical map, you know, when you wanted to travel to a place, the locations may be still the same as you see them today, but there's some things that change on that map, you know, the way they put them together. Now there's digital maps, you know, they have, you know, there's all this GPS, so things have changed. And I feel like hip-hop, it's kind of grown in a way where things have changed, and you can't put it in a box and be like, this is the only system how you can be done. Yeah. And then hip hop is no longer one neighborhood or even one sound, you know. You know, back in the days, you knew that if it was hip hop, it was just like people say, if it ain't coming from America, then it ain't hip hop, you know. And which is ironical that people can actually think like that. They can actually think that that's the only way music can move. It can't move just around one kind of people, you know. And it moved from being one sound and one goal. Right now, it's a global movement. It's a global things happening. If, for example, right now you went to other areas in Africa, whether it's Angola or wherever you go, you went to Japan or in other places that are outside, you would hear that's how far hip hop has grown. You know, in Kenya, hip hop hasn't remained in Nairobi alone, you know. And I don't know if people actually remember, but sometime like back in the 90s, there were a lot of hip hoppers that came to Nairobi but weren't necessarily from Nairobi. You know, you find guys from Kisumu coming to put their records out here. You find guys even from Muranga. You find people from different places. So it wasn't limited. So you cannot put hip hop in one bracket and say this is how it has to happen. And then who decides? Again, who decides if the music is great, if it's not great, if the hip hop movement is great, if it's not great? I feel that is decided by the listener, you know. And that's why I asked you, do you feel that hip hop has changed its way, has lost its way, you know, more or less? And do you feel in Kenya music, that hip hop movement, the one that you love, the hip hop records that are out there, you know, for example, back in the days, we just used to have the boom bap sound and that was it, pretty much it. It was that, and it was dancehall music, reggae music, and of course like rumba. But now there's all these different genres that have come up. You know, if you look at the history of the hip hop movement and music within the hip hop movement, there was that boom bap era. You know, then later on much later on you hear about crunk. You know, crunk music. You know, was more like, it was hip hop, more, it was more like dance music. Yeah. You know, but even before the boom bap era came along, if you look in the early 90s, late 80s to early 90s, music was more like house music. You'd hear groups like Technotronic, you hear like, yeah, pump the jam, pump it up, while your feet out, stomp it. That's what you'd hear. That was still hip hop. You'd hear groups like, I got the power. You know, you hear Snap, you know, you hear Black Box, you hear guys rapping on house beats. You know, when we look at Kenya, that was a time of hip hop music in the house sector, and there was a big dance culture in Kenyan music where there used to be. In fact, I remember in the late 80s, there was this championship called Disco Dance Championship that was on TV. That was on KBC. And I remember there was this group that dressed up like Maasais called the Rare Watts. You know, the people loved. And there was this other dance crew from St. Mary's. They look like twins. They were called Jam City. Yeah. And then there was another group called Suku's Party. Now, I remember, if you won that competition, what happened? You'd win a car. I remember it was a Fiat Uno. That was the name of the car. It was a Fiat Uno. That time, that car was it was classy. If you look at it now, you're like, what the heck were they doing? And I remember the competition was at KICC. And so every week, there'd be a dance championship where people would go and compete. You know, it's based still around, you hear that hip-hop movement, hip-hop dance music, you know, and that's what people used to love. So the dance culture and the rap culture was big at that time. But after that, of course, later on, you after that era, of course, after the boom bap, you come to the crunk era. The crunk was a lot of dance music also that was great. You know, from that, it gave birth to trap. From trap later on, we give birth to drill and other forms of other music. So the culture is constantly growing, so we cannot put it in one culture. And all those music styles have affected about the way Kenyan hip-hop goes, how Kenyan hip-hop grows. We cannot ignore that. So I feel that the map has changed a bit, you know, and it's more on a global mirror than it was on just a certain area that used to focus on it. And with that comes both confusion and clarity on how music needs to move forward. There's, like, for example, when you look at drill music, there's different kinds of drill. There's a UK drill, there's a Miami drill, there's a New York drill. There's all these different kind of drills. But the one in Kenya that the youth associate with is the UK drill. And the UK drill is also quite, because the UK, the way of doing music and the way of rapping is a bit quite conscious, you know. So I felt Kenyans associated. So when I look at the drill movement and what they talk about, it's kind of like, in a way, the boom bap movement is just that the tempo and how they rap and what they're saying is more or less the same thing. It's just different in a different way that it's presented. And so Kenyan hip hop, I say, as I wind up, is that I say 50% of it has actually grown to a certain area. but also we have lost our way in a bit, and that's why the fans aren't necessarily in flow with what we're doing, because they feel that our music isn't growing the way it needs to grow. But can you imagine if all the fan base, all of Kenya would come together and be like, you know what, we're going to embrace our own, we're going to make sure that this music, this Kenyan hip-hop music grows and it becomes great. Can you imagine where Kenya would be on the world platform? Because we can't just be known for making tea, like having tea leaves and coffee and running in the Olympics. I don't feel that is the future of where we're going, you know. So there has been confusion in Kenya, like what is actually Kenyan hip-hop about, you know. But there's also been clarity that comes from the older generation and the newer generation. Of the older generation first is about the older generation, there's becomes clarity of like how we need to merge with the younger guys who are coming up and what we can do for them. The clarity from the younger guys is they're creating a new sound that we haven't been able to adapt to before, and a new way of doing things. They dance a different way. They talk a different way. They move a different way. They relate a different way. So you cannot put them in a box, you know. But my thing is, if the old school generation and the new school generation would come together, then we'd be a force like never before in Kenya, like we were before. Because if you look at the 90s of Kenyan hip-hop, a lot of people used to tune in and listen to what are these guys talking about. There must be something. I was all the way like in the UK, and people were listening to different records coming from Kenya, whether it was from Tejosiah's camp, or whether it was from Caliph, or whether it was from Ogopa DJs. You know, people were listening. Those were not the only recording studios or record labels that were there. There was still, you know, Samawati studios that existed. There was still Johari Clef. People forget one of the main forces of young guys who were coming up that time, who were making records and a lot of records of Kenyan music and Kenyan hip hop also, was the brothers Mandugu Digital, Ambrose Akwabi and Shaki. Yeah, I think they're one of the best producers that have come out of Kenya. You know, they had something that was different. I know, because they're my boys also. They had that sound coming up like Dark Child. There was this producer in America called Dark Child, who still exists. And there's a certain way he did his hip-hop beats where they're more danceable, you know, and they're more movable, so they can be played out there, not just in events, but in clubs and everything where people went to, you know. And so Kenya had that sound, you know. Kenya has its own voice. We have our own way of putting out music together. And there's a new generation, and watch this space for the new generation of both male and female artists that are coming up right now in Kenya. Because when we talk about the older guys, you always hear about guys like Keshaka, you hear about Ukoflani, you hear about Kitusua, you know. You hear about certain names that always stand out there. There's younger guys who are also coming into the genre of music who have their own stories. And sometimes when I listen to those stories, like, I won't lie, I laugh, because they bring the humor. They bring the humor into hip-hop, you know, and that's what I feel is also lacking. You know, the new guys are coming with this way of storytelling. Sometimes I'll be sitting back and I'll be listening, and then their music is also, it cannot be boom bap strictly, you know. There's the boom bap, but they've mixed it, and no genre in hip-hop ever relies on one type of genre, but their style is more danceable. And so that's why you see out there, and if you just look at the crowd when the music is playing, people are knocking the bomb there. They want to dance, they want to get down, because that is the new movement. So let us embrace and not lose our way in hip-hop. Let's make Kenyan hip-hop great. Let's make it wonderful, you know, out there, you know. Let's check out the records. Not just check out the records that people put out. Let us actually put money behind them and invest in that. So our commerce also in Kenya is growing out there, because we have something that is sellable out there, you know. But before we make our music great for any foreigner, anyone who's out there wants to hear music, we have to start at home. Courtesy begins at home. And I feel like that is what has been lost in Kenyan hip-hop, and it's losing its way. The older Kenyan hip-hop from back in the days, there was more people who came behind it, and supported it and believed in it, you know. Maybe because also, like, at that time, there was not really a lot of social media, you know. So you actually have to physically go out to venues and look for that music, look for those artists, and you want to see them perform. You know, because it was so like you couldn't find them like normally. The music wasn't really played on radio till much later on, till some of these records, the main records where KMU started really coming out, hearing about it a lot, was around 2003, 2004 going forward. You know, that was a different shift, you know, in how music was put together. And so I feel like back in the days, a lot of people used to go and they used to get excited to go watch these acts perform because they lived for the live performances. Now, there's still live performances that are going on right now, but I feel we need to invest more in our brands and what we're doing over here. Now, here at Icon Radio, we're all about embracing. So if you have any music that you want us to put out here, like, make sure you send it in to us. You can check on our website how you can send over the music, you know, but make sure it comes with an EPK. In case you don't know, electronic press kit. We need that to understand who you are as an artist. Within Icon Studio, we also run a program at Icon Radio. We run a program that is in collaboration with an institution that we work known as AFTI. So we run what's called artist development. Artist development is really preparing people, preparing individuals and groups for the market right now. So we do everything from songwriting. We train people on songwriting, how to produce music, how to record your music, what is involved in branding, management, marketing. You know, then there's an area of, if I made money right now, you know, how would I use that money to further my career? How would I build upon? Because a lot of guys made money. I know a lot of artists personally here in Kenya have made money, and it doesn't take long before that money is over because they did not invest their money. They did not use it right. So we actually train people on financial literacy. This is a program that's run between AFTI in collaboration with Icon Radio, Icon Studio. So if you want to get the details, you can check online. You have all the details that you can find out about us. Registration is ongoing, you know, and I feel this is something that will really help individuals grow out there. So once again, as a wind up, remember, you have been with the beat maker, not the beat taker. Yes, I don't take people's beats, I make beats, you know. 10 fingers in the air, you know, 10 fingers, all 10 fingers in the air. And if you don't know, you better ask your mama or ask a Kenyan with the good hair. That's how we represent. It's Kenyan hip hop all the way. Remember one thing. If we don't invest in ourselves and we're expecting other people to come and invest in us, even if they do invest in us, they'll manipulate us because we don't know about ourselves. Hip-hop music has always been a culture. It's always been the music, the art form, the musics within the art form have been to uplift each other, you know. So at the end of the day, we need to uplift each other here in Kenya. We're based here in Kenya. We're not based out there. We're not based in these other countries. Sometimes I find it very interesting that artists, whenever I meet artists, one of the first questions they ask me is how they can get out there. They're like, hey, I know you've been abroad. Like, how can I get out there? Let me tell you, those guys abroad, the first question they always ask artists is, what are you doing in your own country? What are you doing? If you ain't doing nothing, there's no way they're going to want to invest in you, because they want to know that you have love where you're coming from. And they use that to promote you out there. Say, hey, we can promote this brand out there. This artist is doing great things. They're doing wonderful things. You know, we can push their brand out there. We can push their music out there. So when it comes to festivals, you know, or things, they're not going to invest in you if they don't see anything valuable in you. One of the first things they do is go and check out your social media page and say, is your social media page, is it growing? How many people do you have following it? Can we see your live shows? Can we see what you music? It's not just about you recording music. So we also teach all of this in the artist development course that we teach, you know, and we talk about it. So one thing that you've got to know is that the only people who will support you the most is your own people, but give them a reason to. So as I wind up, this was the Beatmaker. Hope you enjoy the vault today. More to come. More artists coming over the next couple of weeks. We're back with the Vault Cypher coming up. So if you guys want to appear on the Vault Cypher, holler in. We'll definitely put you down. So the whole of Kenya can know about what you're doing. But as we wind up, just remember, hip hop ni culture ya love. So usisahau, never forget that. Bless up. Stay safe.
Dina, bad girl Didi, bad girl Kariri. Nipate ex Tuesday nikiwa Wombortiris. Rosa Nyoro, fika fiti. Siku zombo tote tunawashombor. Man, me a look where you there. Your girlfriend know me better than them. Man, me a look where you there. Me cause problems everywhere, me I got step. When me drop it down low on the floor, yeah, that's what you prefer. Put your money where your mouth on there, yeah, that's what me prefer. Set it, pick up, set it, pick up. When me set it, you have it, pick up. So when me set it, you have it, pick up.
Nige ni chape chape, chape chape ni setie ni shande shande, shande shande. Goja mapikin baka lale anguka nayo twende down, niche down kwa carpet. Bad girl Kariri nafanya na come esa. Only fun mindo recording hizo videsa. Dema uru lakini ni peng makutesa. Don Julio ananyonyanga bila chesa. Namba uno mini mzinga na ningam. Nikikama tupotezi idha ati. Namba uno mini mzinga na ningam. Nikikama tupotezi idha.
When me drop it down low on the floor, yeah, that's what you prefer. Put your money where your mouth on there, yeah, that's what me prefer. Set it, pick up, set it, pick up. When me set it, you have it, pick up. So when me set it, you have it, pick up. When me drop it down low on the floor, yeah, that's what you prefer. Put your money where your mouth on there, yeah, that's what me prefer. Set it, pick up, set it, pick up.
Yo, Dre.
Stevie Boca Dopa.
Yeah, stona kozi na kujuu ya dimanga shikamorio kuna vile tutakatiana ni headbutt nilimkataka ni point na panga niko na yangu naona tukikatiana staki ngori mob staki ho staki kasiro skuji kasido kasindom nafanya na float staki ngori mob staki ho staki kasiro skuji kasido kasindom nafanya na float siko na thianka ingia chinje pake tema bob ezikafanya ni change wanted never me najua kushi
You're just too good to be true. Can't take my eyes off you. You'll be like heaven to touch. I wanna hold you so much. At last long love has arrived, and I thank God I'm alive. You're just too good to be true. Can't take my eyes off of you. Pardon the way that I stare. There's nothing else to compare. The sight of you leaves me weak. There are no words left to speak. But if you feel like I feel, please let me know that it's real. You're just too good to be true. Can't take my eyes off of you. You're just too good to be true. Can't take my eyes off of you. You'll be like heaven to touch. I wanna hold you so much. At last long love has arrived, and I thank God I'm alive. You're just too good to be true. Can't take my eyes off of you. I love you, baby, and if it's quite alright, I need you, baby, to one of lonely nights. I love you, baby, trust in me when I say, oh pretty baby, don't break me down, I pray. Oh pretty baby, now that I found you, stay, let me love you, baby, let me love you. You're just too good to be true. Can't take my eyes off you. You'll be like heaven to touch. I wanna hold you so much. At last long love has arrived, and I thank God I'm alive. You're just too good to be true. Can't take my eyes off of you.
And that one is you. No other will do. I've lost all ambition or worldly acclaim. I just wanna be the one you love. I've lost all ambition or worldly acclaim. I just wanna be the one you love. Lost all ambition, worldly acclaim. I just wanna be the one you love. I've lost all ambition or worldly acclaim. I just wanna be the one you love. I've lost all ambition or worldly acclaim. I just wanna be the one you love, love. Lost all ambition or worldly acclaim. I just want just be the one you love. I've lost all ambition or worldly acclaim. I just wanna be the one you love, love. Wanna, wanna, wanna. And I walk and I shake my awful.
Put your head on my shoulder. Hold me in your arms.
Thank you.